McGillicuddy, and I'm the 2010 president of the New Hampshire Association of Realtors. While they're pulling up the slides, I want to take a moment on a personal note, and on behalf of the staff and everyone up at NHAR, the leadership team with the New Hampshire Association of Realtors, just really want to congratulate John Rice on his election as president-elect in 2011, and then he will be president in 2012. As most of you know, John being past president of this board, he was also the founding person behind this, I think, event 3 years ago. And the success of this event, I think, speaks volumes to his dedication, his drive, his vision. And I can tell you honestly, I believe we're in for a treat when he becomes president in 2012. So congratulations, John. I'm going to spend my few minutes talking about the New Hampshire housing market as a whole. And a lot of my talking points have also been covered, so I'm going to try to be fairly brief, but I think it's really important to stress a message that I've spoken to often, and that certainly all the previous speakers today have also spoken about. And that is that every market is local. There is no way that we can compare New Hampshire to the national market. The New Hampshire market is not the Nevada market, certainly isn't the Florida market. Just like Portsmouth is not the Keene or Lancaster markets. All markets are local. And our role as realtors, it's a very important role, and it's something that sets us apart as industry professionals, and that is the knowledge of our local markets. The knowledge that we bring as realtors is crucial and critical, particularly in this point in time. With that in mind, I'd like to really talk about the New Hampshire market where it stands today, and using our most recent market data. Of course, as president, I'm constantly being called by the press, I'm constantly being asked questions, and one thing they always ask is, when are we going to know for sure that we're at the bottom? And our price is going to continue to rise, is activity going to continue to rise? I wish I had a crystal ball. I'm a practicing realtor like many of you in the room as well, and the honest answer to that question is we simply don't know. It's very, very difficult for us to tell, particularly in the light of the last 2 months' recent data. But one thing that we know for sure is that housing will remain a sound, long-term investment. It's proven, and it will remain that way. We are not in the economic forecasting business, folks in this room are. The best we can do is look at our historical data, both long and short term. So let's look at our first slide, Dave. Thank you. If you look at this slide, and you probably saw this slide if you came at the beginning of the year, but we've certainly added 2010 onto it. But if you look at this, it's important for us to look at the statewide data, and we look at it in two chunks. The year 1998, and we go right up to probably about 2005, but we take that period, that first chunk, and in that 7-year window, we actually had a climb of 112% in our median sales price. That's huge. 1998, the median sales price was $127,500, and then in 2005 it was $270,000. That was huge. In that roughly that same period, from 1998 to 2004, unit sales also climbed 18%. Wow. Since that time, the second chunk on this slide, of course, the market has slipped, to put it mildly. But from the peak of $270,000 in 2005, the median price dropped 21% up to the year 2009. And unit sales also dropped by 40% up to the year 2008. So the second chunk of data certainly did look bleak. And then if you look on the bottom of the slide, you'll see the year 2009. We like to think of that as sort of a transitional type of year, because that's certainly what it appears to have been. As you can see from the last two lines, all of a sudden we saw an increase. We saw our first increase in 2009 in unit sales. And then a slight uptick that continued on to 2010 currently. So for the first 6 months of this year at least, we were certainly optimistic, and we believed we could possibly be looking at a trend. However, after our July and August numbers, it's a little bit more difficult for us to really tell. Let's take a look at our next slide, Dave. Thank you. This slide is going to show you the quarterly numbers. And you can see this is breaking down the year 2009 in quarterly numbers and then the first 2 quarters of 2010. Unit sales are in blue. If you look at the first quarter of 2009, you can see we dropped, we were at 5% from the previous year. And then the second quarter dropped again, 3.2%. And then all of a sudden, third quarter, we had an increase. And then fourth quarter, we had a dramatic increase. Tax credit potentially, yes. That increase continued to the first 2 quarters of 2010. In red, the median price, you can see trended and followed. So the beginning part of 2009, the gap got narrower until we had our increase, and then it continued. And then again came the last July and August. Of course, the quarter is not done yet. We don't have all the data, but the first 2 months show a decrease. You can change the slide. Thank you. Our third slide is going to bring you to our, basically back to our local markets, and it's going to show you all our counties. I think one thing important to note before I talk about this slide is that even though we did have a decrease in July and in August, and the August numbers are not as dramatic as the July numbers were, it's important to note that we are still up year-to-date statewide, 4.3% in units sold. And we're still up in price, 1.9% in sales price. So, you know, while the market, next month is certainly going to tell a picture when we get our statistics and we finish up the quarter. While the market is certainly difficult to predict, everyone tells me, people that I've talked to, there's activity out there. This slide is going to pretty well break down our August numbers by county, and unfortunately you can see that all of our counties reported drops in unit sales, and 12% statewide. Median price was also down in 4 out of our 10 counties, and then also down nearly 3% statewide. Again, you know, while it looks bleak, and we certainly we're not excited to see those drops, especially July when it happened, but we're not surprised by those drops. We know, and we were very, very careful not to look at this as any kind of a trend, or to even call last November a trend when we had a 70% increase in unit sales. We did not say this was the bottom. We did not say this was a trend. We've been cautiously optimistic all along, and we continue to be so. The drop in July and in August, you know, significantly, I think the tax credit has affected our market. The huge boost in November, as buyers tried to get in before the end of that crunch, showed in our numbers. And then the second boost, I believe, the end of April, when our second tax credit expired, all of a sudden came May and June, and activity slowed down. You all know, as practicing realtors, when the activity slows down, that is going to reflect in the closed numbers you're going to see 2 months later. So July and August naturally reflected to us the closed numbers being down as the lack of activity after the tax credit expired for the second time. Folks sat back and wondered, was it going to be extended? What was going to happen? And of course, that hasn't happened. It's probably going to take us realistically well into the rest of the year, and perhaps into the year 2011, before we can get a real sense of what the market will do without the stimulus of that tax credit. When we come together next year for this event, hopefully we'll have a better idea of the impact of the tax credit on our market and how our market trended without it. Until that time, there's definitely a few things we can certainly say with authority. And we know that conditions remain in place in New Hampshire for increased activity. We know there's still plenty of inventory. And for buyers out there with good credit, my goodness, the mortgage rates are phenomenal. So all those things are in play. New Hampshire remains a desirable place for many people to live. We have everything in our favor as far as that's concerned. And in general, we know that the housing market will continue to serve as a sound long-term investment option for many folks. So that brings me to my conclusion, to our role as a realtor. I spoke about this last time I was here, and I'm going to repeat it because I think it's important that we as realtors continue to show ourselves as industry leaders in terms of not only market knowledge and expertise, but in our professional standards as well. Not just as salespeople, but as community builders. And not just as advocates for transactions, but as advocates for our clients. And that means giving them the best possible advice so that they can make the best buying and selling decision based on their individual needs. Even if that means not to buy or sell. That's our job, that's our role. And it's critical that we continue to play both those roles. Because while consumer confidence in the market will certainly help us build short-term success, it is without a doubt the confidence that consumers have in us that will serve us well into the future. Our code of ethics talks about the term realtor has come to connote competency, fairness, high integrity. And that is ever so important now. Know your market, know your client, and serve those clients as you would expect to be served. If we do all those things, our professional and all of the successes will follow. We're going to be in for a little bit of a ride. We'll get through it at the end. Abide by the code, do your job, serve your clients, and at the end of this, we're going to be standing there, we're going to be happy and smiling. And that's my remarks. Thank you for having me. And